What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day, where we as Black male justice advocates use critical analysis to uplift Black men and boys. Hope you all are well. What's up, Freddie? Hybrid Ninjas, what's going on? Hope you're good. Hope your start of the week has been strong. Y'all make sure you like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel. You can join either on YouTube or you can join on Patreon. Become a member of the channel. You can support monthly or you can do a one-time donation. You can do that with the information on the screen as far as Patreon, Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo is concerned. So, yeah, help out if you would. What's up, Donnie? I'm listening. What's going on? Hope you guys are good, man. I just wanted to hit you real quick with a piece that ran across my desk. Durante, appreciate that support. That I thought was important, right? And it deals with this issue of 50-50 custody. Now, I'm going to get into that in a moment, but I got a little pet peeve, a little something I got to get off my chest. And I notice this when I'm going through social media or when I'm teaching in classes. And I must be the only person in the world, but I have a serious pet peeve with the two words, I feel, or sometimes it's three, I feel like, right? I got a little pet peeve with those words because they usually are the beginning points to a complete lack of accountability for what comes after. So if I ask a question, what did, such and such author say in the chapter, we just read? Well, I feel like, and usually it's followed by nothing related to what was asked, nothing. And even in the conversations I've noticed online, especially when it pertains to relationships, whenever I hear I feel like, it's a problem. It's a problem. And it usually, like I said, it's a marker for a complete lack of accountability and a complete deflection from whatever the conversation actually was. So it's become one of my pet peeves. And I've been challenging my students to actually start their sentences with I think, or at the very least, an accurate response to the question on the table. I feel usually is a problem. This shit gets on my nerves. I apologize, but it is what it is. But nevertheless, now that I had a chance to say that, and I am curious if you guys have had these experiences. So particularly to my Black male listeners, if you've run across these I feel answers that are followed by a complete lack of accountability, share them in the comment section. I'd love to hear that because I have a feeling it's not just me. Anyway, so we're going to look at an article today that I think is pretty interesting, right? And this one comes from the Charleston Gazette Mail, right? Is a piece entitled 50-50 Custody Bill One Step Away from Governor's Desk, dated March 11, 2022, right? So here you can see Delegate Danielle Walker, Democrat, in the foreground, questioning Delegate Jeff Foster, Republican, on House Bill 2363, Monday at the Capitol. And it reads, the West Virginia legislature is one vote away from adopting a bill that would require family court judges to equally split physical custody of children at the onset of custody proceedings. The House of Delegates on Friday adopted Senate Bill 463, bringing the bill closer to law than similar measures in recent years have made it. Because the House made some changes to the bill, members of the Senate will have to vote Saturday on whether to accept those changes before it can advance to Governor Jim Justice for his consideration. The bill, titled "The Best Interests of the Child Act," would require family court judges to give parents 50-50 custody on a temporary basis at the start of child custody proceedings, unless there's clear evidence of abuse or other threats to the child's safety. Now that's interesting. Because if you look at the video I did a couple weeks ago on Black child maltreatment, looking at the 2020 maltreatment report that came out, child maltreatment report, we actually found that, it tends to be women, mothers most particularly, but also to a small degree, childcare providers, but females that are actually most abusive when it comes to children. And by race, Black folk. So, this actually could be an interesting piece of policy in terms of allowing fathers a foothold in being able to report abuse in ways that they may not have been able to prior. David, appreciate that support. Right. So, anyway, let's continue. Right. Carl for president. Thank you for becoming a gold member. Welcome to the Brotherhood of the Onyx Report. Let's see. People speaking in support of the bill said it would create an environment for healthier outcomes for children by encouraging involvement from both parents. What this bill does is take a step in the direction of having both parents involved in the child's life to the maximum extent possible, said Delegate Jeff Foster, Republican Putnam. That's all it's doing is making sure these kids have the best chance possible to succeed. People who spoke against the bill said it was bad policy that puts the feelings of parents, who most often are not getting along, above the well-being of children and sets up children to be collateral in disagreements between their parents. That's already happening. It's already happening, especially when you're in a dynamic where, for the most part, one parent tends to have way more leverage in this situation than the other. And we've seen repeatedly, especially if you watch any, YouTube and look for these kind of parental custody kind of situations, women have grown very comfortable knowing full well who's going to have more leverage, more control, and who's usually going to have the deciding, kind of nod when it comes to parental custody. And we've also seen that weaponized against fathers. The problem is it's just become so normalized, we don't think about it as a problem, or at least you don't think about it as a problem unless you're the father that's dealing with this. And if you're a good father at that, what's that? RCC, appreciate that support. Thank you. Art of Idmore, what's going on? Right. But if you are the father, then you've definitely, had you're not necessarily appreciating this experience, having the family weaponized against you. And so it's interesting that when you actually see a policy move that seeks to balance the field when it comes to parents, now it's a question of how much parents are using children as as collateral in disagreements, according to the article. But it wasn't a problem before that. It wasn't a problem. It isn't a problem already. And this bill hasn't, according to this article, been signed yet. I don't know if anything's happened since then, considering that this is dated 3 days ago. But still, I rather doubt it. And it's definitely not a national policy. But it's interesting to note that the degree to which, this, may contribute to parents using their children as pawns in battles with one another, all of a sudden we're going to forget that this has already been happening. And it's primarily been going one way. So let's continue. I think it's misnamed, said Delegate Barbara Fleshauer. It's not in the best interest of the child. It's in the best interest of the two parents who are fighting each other. See, this is so disingenuous. This is so disingenuous. This is already happening. Nobody cares because it's happening primarily to men. Right? Delegate Mike Pushkin, who grew up in a single-parent household, said the bill was not one that would put a stop to bad outcomes for children who live in single-parent households. This bill does nothing that will keep families together. It will result in children being shipped back and forth, having less stability, and it is absolutely not in the best interest of the child. See, that's interesting. Because children are already going back and forth, except in too many instances where you have fathers, even when paying child support, who can't get access to their own children. Because again, the children are being used as pawns in a battle between the parents, but it's not something that fathers have a whole lot of leverage in. So it's interesting that it's only now that this whole question of really, parental exploitation of children is coming up at the possibility that men might actually have equal footing in the dynamic. But we're just going to ignore that it's already been happening. Okay. The House adopted the bill in a 75-22 vote. In addition to making equally split custody, the presumption at the beginning of a custody case, the bill also allows for people in custody disputes to appeal a family court judge's ruling to the West Virginia Intermediate Court of Appeals while their case still is pending. Existing law requires that a case be closed before custody agreements can be appealed. The bill also would require family court judges to consider a child's emotional stability and whether a parent has not been involved in their child's life, intentional or not. Family court judges also would be prohibited from considering a person's ability to pay child support as a factor in the physical custody arrangement between parents. A similar child custody bill passed the House in 2020, but later died when the House and Senate couldn't agree or couldn't reach an agreement on certain bill provisions. Right. You're going to see why this whole issue of child support is important in relation to 50-50 custody in a moment. Um, what's up, BGS? Good to have you in here. Thanks for that article. Much appreciated. Well, it'll be interesting. Whether this is the end of the 10 years doctrine, hey, we'll see. Might be something we need to chop up. So that's the end of this particular article. Now, why is this particularly relevant? And why would it be something that I would introduce on my channel as a point of discussion? Well, for one thing, you guys remember in 2020, one of the things we did here at the Onyx Report is we developed the Black male political agenda. And this was an agenda that had contributions from Black men, across social media, and they submitted policies that they thought should be good, thought that would be useful to Black males. And this is important because for the most part, whenever we talk about a Black political agenda, and we saw this with Ice Cube, it's rarely gendered. And when it is gendered, it's gendered primarily to suit women, which is fine. Every demographic has its issues. I don't have a problem with policies that are specific to women, specific to children, specific to differently abled people. Have no problem with that. But for some reason, we talk about men. Now you got to have all kind of qualifications, right? Particularly heterosexual men at that. And you don't find that most discussions on a Black political agenda include gendered policy for men. Matter of fact, you'll often find that Black men themselves, if you ask them what policies would be useful to other Black males, you probably get a blank face. You just get stared at. And it's not because people are unintelligent. It's because we've never really been allowed to have that conversation. We've been taught since childhood that gender only applied to women and girls. Sexuality only applies to LGBT. And these are all ridiculous. No, that's not the case. Men have a gender. It is what it is. And despite that universities treat men like they don't, that doesn't mean men have no gender. And so men need to be the ones imposing, this approach, and as far as sexuality, yeah, if you're heterosexual, that is a form of sexuality. There's no problem with introducing that and discussing it, despite who may not want to hear it. So we developed the Black male political agenda to advocate for Black males. And in many instances, advocate for heterosexual Black males who don't even know in many instances that they have something to put to up for discussion as far as a set of political ideas. So you'll notice the Black male political agenda, and I will put the link in the live chat. I will also put it in the description of the video for those who are catching the replay. And you'll notice it's not been updated in a while. So if you guys have some other ideas you want to add, you can go ahead and send them to me. The easiest way is to go to my website, and I will, I'll put that up for you as well. All right, so there's the website, and you can click the email at the top, or you can copy it and paste it, and you can go ahead and send me what you may want to send. Go from there. But there we go. All right, so back to the Black male political agenda. You can send whatever you like. I'll look it over. And if I think it's definitely relevant to the discussion, I'll add it. As it says, it is believed that the ideas proposed here should identify the target audience when drafted into policy, Black males. It should be made unapologetically clear that these are not just for people of color, the poor, etc. It's specifically targeted to Black males. And I'm tired of us tap dancing around that. There needs to be some place, even online, where you can unapologetically advocate for Black males that isn't shrouded behind mystery, shrouded behind vague language, because the cost of that is when you do actually start to get policy, which is often shrouded in that kind of vague language. If it starts shrouded and then it gets written shrouded, guess who ends up not benefiting from it to the greatest degree? So we're going to be unapologetic in our advocating for Black men. And you'll notice the very first one on there is family court reform. Now, there are plenty of others. We have several others. We have education, we have affirmative action, targeted homelessness programs, unemployment programs, law enforcement, so on and so forth. But When brothers suggested the very first thing on the list, the first thing they talked about was family court reform. And 1A, the first aspect of family court reform that brothers wanted to deal with was 50-50 custody. So it reads, the family court's treatment of black men has unfairly and drastically diminished black men and boys' quality of life by privileging women as the primary caregivers. A, child custody. This includes automatic 50-50. So we're proposing automatic 50-50 child custody as long as fathers can prove what mothers are required to as far as being able to provide a stable and safe living environment. Once determined, pre-existing income-based alimony / child support judgments levied against black men should be reassessed. Also, child support payments for either parent should be eliminated. And there's a video there, and this was, I think it was pretty much a video done by Dennis Sperling, attorney Dennis Sperling, and it says scroll to 27 minutes where he talks about that. Payments for either parent should be eliminated with 50-50 custody and should only be considered if there isn't a 50-50 custody arrangement. So what we're basically talking about here are the ways in which black men tend to find themselves not only without access to their children, but flogged unnecessarily with payments that many can't afford, right? Especially in the last couple of years where we have seen, high levels of unemployment. We've seen businesses go under. We've seen people sick. We've seen people unable to work, seen people lose transportation. Of course, that doesn't even count family court imposed limits on transportation, like having your driver's license taken, or worst case scenario, being in prison, being due to falling behind in payments, all these kind of different things, especially when it comes to fathers who want to have custody and are able to provide it and find themselves unable to get granted that. Greg, appreciate that support on the Cash App. Thank you. Yeah. So this is one of the things we gotta put on the table. And this is just one in many. But the reason I did this is because I wanted to say that the concepts and ideas that we talk about, or even that we imply, even when we haven't thought it through, we haven't talked it through, but a lot of the discussions that brothers are having have policy implications. In other words, many of the discussions we have, if we learn how to think about them politically, actually can be policies, proposed policies that work to our benefit. And this is, I doubt, something that black men have pushed in this particular situation, as far as Charleston is concerned, right? We're looking here at West Virginia. I don't think this is something black men propose. And I say that to say that this is something that can be done. In other words, there are policies that not only align for black men, but align for others. And politically, on a short-term basis, you tend to develop relationships with others that share your belief about given policies. All we have to start doing is actually identifying the policies that we think will work in our best interest. And then you let the chips fall where they may. I mean, it's kind of like starting a YouTube channel. You start your stuff, you start putting your stuff out there. You're going to get people that hate your guts. You're going to get a lot of people that ignore you, but you're also going to get people that agree with you. Whether what you're saying is incredibly ridiculous or incredibly on point, there are going to be people that agree with you. And if you're interested in turning your thoughts and ideas into actionable policy, then you got to align first with the people that agree with you and mobilize from there. And right now, this has been something that black men have been fairly excluded from due to, in some parts due to, social distractions like, policy that work against them already, hyper incarceration, hyper unemployment. You tend to have to survive before you actually start thinking about politics. But then also, because when you look at the larger society, when they do fixate on the black community, for the most part, they don't fixate on black men. They've targeted other groups for a point of focus, which leaves black men in a position of advocating for the black community as a whole, right? And you guys have heard me talk about this. This is what I mean by flat blackness, right? Where, we're all supposed to advocate for certain policies that benefit the black community. And if we gender those policies, then they only need to benefit girls or women. But if we talk about men and boys, it's a problem. And y'all already know, if you doubt me, yeah, go watch Ice Cube talk to them ladies, Vivica and all of them. Go watch him talk about that. He didn't even bring up black men, and it was a problem. It was a problem because he didn't bring up black women. He was considered a sexist for not bringing up black women. kind of like with Tina Knowles' documentary, right? It was considered a problem because she didn't focus on Black women. If Black women aren't the focus, there's a problem. If Black men are the focus, there's an even greater problem, because really it's still the same problem, that they didn't focus instead on Black women. This has manifested itself politically for quite a while. So much so that I've never heard of a Black male specific political agenda until we wrote one. Now, if there's another, I'm happy to look at it. I'm not trying to say that these things never happened before, but to my knowledge, it hasn't. I'd like to see one, and we can learn quite a bit from it, I'm sure. So if any of you are well aware of a Black male political agenda that was developed before 2020 outside of the Onyx Report, please send it to me. Please. But if you're not, well, matter of fact, here's the thing. Even if there is one, the degree to which none of us know about it says something about the state of black male politics. Politics that are purposefully and unapologetically in focus of Black male life. Either one has not existed prior, or it exists but it's so irrelevant none of us know about it. There has been a push, even in the community, to make sure that Black males don't focus on themselves. And you know what? Black males participate in that wholly, because we were taught that falling on our swords and being chivalrous was what it meant to be in a community. I'm not saying that there's no place to be had for Black men, supporting policy that works, to advocate certain demographics. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with Black men supporting it. Nothing wrong with Black men not being the focus of every conversation. But when it's only a problem when Black men are the focus, now we got a different thing happening. And we got to call it the way we see it. We got to call it the way it's happening. There's an attempt to exclude Black men from the conversation, and most particularly the political conversation. You tell me what policies were even discussed in the last presidential election that had anything to do directly with Black males. Right. And when you look at the scale of what Black men face, and Black boys for that matter, even the small number of conversations that may have been had are ridiculously irrelevant when compared to the severity of Black male life. So this humble attempt, this Black male political agenda, is one way we're coming at the problem. But at the end of the day, we have to be the ones to push it. And I'm saying that this particular article shows us that there are policies that can be pushed. There are those who may work in agreement. That doesn't mean that everybody got to join one party. It means that you work micro-politically. You work with the groups that will work with you when it comes to the policies you're trying to pass. And this is, I think, at the heart of what Ice Cube was trying to suggest. Let's remove ourselves from this one party identification, work with who's interested in working with us, and negotiate with who we have to, especially if they're in power. It is what it is. You can't just wait for one group, especially when that group does not do what it promises to do for you when you do get them into office. So at the end of the day, and in that respect, I'm fairly apolitical as far as, any dedication to one party. I agree with BGS in that respect. I'm a pragmatist. What's necessary? Who do we negotiate to get what we need? But before we can even get to those conversations, Black men have to mobilize and turn their concerns, issues, and thoughts into, actionable policy suggestions. Now, that can start with a casual conversation. It can start with an email from you, and it might end up being an incredibly important point in developing a new politic for Black men and boys. You never know. Shout out to Victor. Appreciate that donation. Says, found your channel through Bernard Riley's channel. I worked on MBK and related in the past. Happy to have found this channel. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming through. Yeah. And it's up there to be shared, man. I put it, the Black male political agenda is public. And I'm hoping that people who are in a position to use it to advocate for Black males have a static, website they can come to access what's been proposed. So anyway, So that's what's up. That's what we're trying to get across. And as I said, this was the very first point that Black men raised. I didn't write this. I just housed it, sometimes polished some of the ideas so that they were clear. But the very first one proposed was 50-50 child custody, because Black men are tired of being written out of parenting, especially when they're actually the better parent. We ain't even gonna have that conversation because we're not allowed to have that one. When Black males are actually the more stable parent, there's no frame of reference for that. I've got boys in their 60s, in the late 50s, who've gone through this as far back as the 1980s, fighting for custody and fighting the courts as well as their exes for custody when they were the stable ones, when they were the ones who were able to provide stability, direction, peaceful environment, safety, all of that. Courts assumed a priori that they were incapable of providing that simply because they were male. We have to be able to push back on this. So that's essentially what we're looking at. And I just wanted to kind of drop that to you because I think it's not as much about just this issue as it is the potential for Black men to develop a politic that is nuanced, that is particular, that is unapologetic, that is clear. I think those things are possible, and there are already things going on throughout the country and throughout the world that can be useful to us if we become, if we allow ourselves to become aware of it, and we start to ask questions about how we might be able to support it and bring those policies to where we are. I think this is the beginning, or it could be, of a conversation that needs to be had about how to operationalize the things we talk about. Right now, I'm all for social media providing a platform that many Black men have not been able to develop with any consistency over the last X number of generations. We've not had corporations come to us in any great number to offer us platforms, except to the extent, if you look at, say, hip hop, that we have limited power and control over that. We have a couple of hand-picked artists. Very different thing. But if you can actually start what starts as a grassroots political bloc and advances from there and becomes something bigger, now that's interesting. That's interesting. And even the extent to which we already have Black politicians in position, to what extent can we pressure them to actually support policy that advocates for Black men? Just because it advocates for Black men doesn't need to mean that it is anti any other group. We've just never politically asked the question, what exactly do Black men need? We've heard conversation about, high levels of incarceration. We go back and forth on that one. But that's as far as the discussion tends to go. And it needs to go a lot further than that, because there's so many other issues that relate to Black male life. Right? This particular webpage, we have 13 different areas, most of which have multiple sub areas. And my suspicion is there are plenty more. But my channel is relatively small, so until we can grow the conversation, it's going to come down to the people who actually do hear this and are willing to contribute. My hope is that you will, and we can grow from there. All right. So I'm going to go through the comments, check it out. Let me see. But again, especially in the comments after the video, give your suggestions. Give your thoughts about policies, about things that you wish were laws, and let's see what we can do. So anyway, appreciate y'all's presence here. Appreciate your support. Hope you'll continue to support the Onyx Report and help us build the channel, because I don't think it's an accident. Somebody was telling me earlier today that every time they try to share my videos on Facebook, it won't post. That's what he was saying. It won't post to their page. I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, but thanks for the support, y'all. I look forward to hearing your comments. Y'all have a good one. Peace.